Ladies and gentlemen, you are not powerless. No matter what your mind has told you, no matter what life has whispered in your darkest hours, no matter what your circumstances have tried to convince you of, because deep within you there is a strength that has not been silenced, an authority that has not been stripped, and a purpose that has not been erased. Too many walk through life believing they are victims of their past, prisoners of their mistakes, or hostages of their environment. But the truth is, the very fact that you are still here is proof that weakness did not win. Power is not the absence of struggle, it is the presence of resilience, the kind of resilience that refuses to surrender even when the weight of life feels unbearable. And today, I want to remind you that you carry more than you think. You have more than you've seen, and you are equipped with more than you've ever dared to believe, because you are not powerless. You are the evidence that strength can stand even when the storm rages. Identity determines authority because authority is never born out of mere desire or ambition. It flows from recognition of who you are and whose you are. And until that reality settles deep in your heart, you will continue to feel like a bystander in your own life, waiting for permission to stand up, waiting for circumstances to validate your existence when the truth is, power was never meant to be begged for. It was meant to be walked in. Too many people go through life feeling small, convinced that their past disqualifies them, or their failures limit them, or their scars weaken them. But authority is not based on the opinions of people or the labels of culture. It is rooted in the unshakable truth that your identity is greater than the battles you've faced. When you forget who you are, you settle for less, you bow to fear, you allow doubt to write the script of your life, and you live beneath your calling. But when you reclaim your identity, suddenly the same world that mocked you has to reckon with the power you carry. Think about it. When someone has authority, it is not always because they are the strongest or the loudest, but because their position validates their voice. A police officer does not need to be bigger than traffic to stop it. He only needs to raise his hand because his uniform and badge declare his authority. And in the same way, when you know your identity, you don't have to scream at the storm or wrestle with every obstacle. You can simply stand in the truth of who you are and command what looks unmovable to shift. The enemy of your soul knows this, which is why his greatest strategy is confusion about identity. If he can get you to doubt who you are, he can get you to surrender the authority you were already given. He doesn't have to chain your feet if he can chain your mind with lies that you are powerless, forgotten, and incapable. But once you rise and remember that your authority is not earned but inherited, that your power is not purchased by effort but bestowed by design, suddenly every chain that seemed unbreakable begins to crack under the weight of truth. Identity determines authority because authority is never about pretending, it's about aligning. You don't have to fake strength you don't have. You have to align with the strength that already belongs to you. Lions do not go to the forest begging the animals to acknowledge them. They roar because their identity demands it, and everything around them responds. In the same way, when you know who you are, you stop living for approval and start living from position. You stop being reactive to every attack and start being proactive in how you move. Fear loses its grip not because fear disappears, but because you finally remember you were never meant to bow to it. Circumstances stop dictating your peace not because life gets easy, but because you carry a higher authority that circumstances cannot touch. The truth is, authority does not flow from talent, popularity, or perfection. It flows from identity. The one who knows they are chosen, called, and set apart walks differently. They refuse to hand over their confidence to every critic. They refuse to shrink in rooms where others try to dim their light. They refuse to let brokenness define them because they know their name carries weight. And so, when you rise tomorrow and face the doubts whispering that you are too weak, too late, too damaged, remember this. Identity determines authority, and the moment you stand in that truth, you realize you were never powerless. You were simply living beneath the reality of who you already are. Do you want me to expand all 6 key points this same way, 600 words each, so they can fit together as a full-length speech? Circumstances don't define strength because strength is not measured by the weight of what falls on you, but by the force of what rises within you. And if you confuse the two, you will always misinterpret your own life, thinking weakness defines you, when in reality, resilience is being built in you. Too often people look at their situation and say, "This is too much, this is too heavy, this is too unfair." And they assume that because their circumstances are overwhelming, they must be powerless. But the truth is that the fire you face is not proof of your weakness. It is the evidence that something inside you has the capacity to withstand more than you imagined. A tree is not defined by the storms it endures, but by the roots that hold it steady. And if you only look at the storm, you'll call the tree fragile. But if you look at the roots, you'll see that it is unshakable. Life has a way of lying to you through your circumstances. The loss whispers that you're finished, the failure declares that you're broken, the betrayal insists that you'll never recover, but none of those things have the power to define you unless you hand over your identity to them. What you've gone through is part of your story, but it is not the totality of your strength. Strength shows itself not in the absence of struggle, but in the persistence to keep moving when the struggle seems unbearable. There are people who have been through unimaginable pain yet still walk with dignity, still choose to love, still decide to fight for tomorrow, and that is strength. Circumstances may paint you as defeated, but strength writes a deeper narrative, one where pain becomes the soil for perseverance, and loss becomes the ground where new vision grows. When you measure yourself by your situation, you will always be inconsistent. Good days will make you feel powerful, and hard days will make you feel powerless. But strength is not that fragile. Strength is not the mood of a moment. It is the character of a soul that refuses to quit. Your circumstances will shift. They will rise and fall. They will favor you one day and oppose you the next. But who you are and the power you carry do not fluctuate with the weather of life. A diamond doesn't stop being a diamond when it's buried in dirt. It retains its value regardless of environment. In the same way, your strength is not erased because you are surrounded by chaos. It is revealed in how you stand in the middle of it. You must learn to look at circumstances as mirrors, not masters. They may reflect your current challenge, but they do not have the authority to rule over your identity. A broken season doesn't mean you are broken. A difficult year doesn't mean you are destined for defeat. Strength is forged in the very pressure that tries to convince you to surrender. If you feel surrounded, it only means you're in the training ground where your endurance is stretching and your capacity is growing. Strength cannot be seen on the surface. It is proven in the hidden decisions, the quiet determination, the refusal to stay down when life knocks you flat. The truth is, the greatest victories in life rarely come from people who had perfect circumstances. They come from those who stared at impossible odds and still refused to let those odds dictate the outcome of their story. You are not the product of what you've been through. You are the product of what you've chosen to believe in the midst of it. Your strength is not defined by whether the storm calms down, but by whether you stand long enough to see it pass. That is why you can look your circumstances in the eye and declare, "You don't define me." You can endure heartbreak and still live with hope. You can face loss and still cultivate love. You can carry scars and still walk in strength. Circumstances don't define strength because strength was never about what happens to you. It was always about what rises in you despite what has happened. Want me to go ahead and expand the third point? Faith activates power. In the same 600-word flow, faith activates power because power unused remains dormant, like a seed buried in the ground with the potential to grow into a towering tree, but never realizing its strength until the soil is broken and the roots push through. Power is not just about having something within you. It is about accessing and releasing it, and faith is the key that unlocks that door. You can be equipped with ability, filled with potential, and surrounded by opportunity, but without faith, you will live as if you are empty, weak, and overlooked. Faith takes what is invisible and makes it visible. It takes what is internal and brings it into the external. It takes what is merely possible and turns it into reality. Power is not activated when life gets easy. It is activated when you dare to believe in the middle of impossibility that something greater is working in your favor. Too many people wait to feel powerful before they act, but that is not how true strength works. If you wait for fear to disappear, you will never step forward. If you wait for the path to be perfectly clear, you will never move. Faith steps even when the ground looks shaky. Faith speaks even when the outcome is uncertain. Faith dares even when the odds look impossible, and in that act of daring, the power that was always present finally comes alive. Think of a lamp that is fully designed to give light. It has the bulb, the wiring, the structure, everything it needs. But until it is connected to a source and the switch is turned, it remains dark. Faith is the switch. It doesn't create power, but it connects you to the source of it, and suddenly light floods where there was once only shadow. The challenge is that doubt whispers louder than faith at times. Doubt tells you that nothing will change, that you are wasting your effort, that your past failures will repeat themselves. Doubt convinces you to stand still, while faith insists you move. The choice between the two determines whether your power remains locked away or whether it floods into your reality. Faith doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you acknowledge reality, but refuse to be defined or limited by it. Faith looks at the mountain and still chooses to climb. Faith looks at the storm and still sets sail. Faith looks at the valley and still declares that there will be a way through it. And every time you choose faith, you activate power that would have remained hidden if you had let fear dictate your actions. Faith is not about feeling strong. It is about trusting that strength is available even when you feel weak. It is not about pretending the struggle isn't there. It is about believing that the struggle will not consume you. When you walk in faith, you stop relying solely on your own capacity and start drawing from a power far greater than your own. That is why people who seem ordinary can do extraordinary things. It isn't because they are superhuman. It is because faith has connected them to a strength that transcends human limits. Faith doesn't erase the difficulty, but it changes your relationship with it. Instead of seeing the problem as the final word, you start to see it as the stage where your power will be revealed. The truth is, Power without faith is potential wasted, and faith without action is belief untested. But when the two collide, when you choose to believe and to act, there is no limit to what can break open in your life. Chains that felt permanent begin to shatter. Doors that were closed begin to open. Paths that were hidden begin to appear. Faith activates power because it refuses to let fear have the final say. It dares you to step forward before everything makes sense, and in that step, the impossible begins to bow to the possible. That is why the most powerful thing you can ever do is believe, not in what you see, but in what you know to be true even when everything around you contradicts it. Because that belief has the authority to transform not only your situation, but the very core of who you are. Do you want me to continue with Your Voice Carries Authority in the same style and length? Your voice carries authority because words are not empty sounds. They are declarations that shape atmospheres, influence hearts, and direct destinies. And too many people live as though their voice is powerless when in reality it was designed to carry weight. You can speak life into a dry place and see it flourish, or you can speak despair into a hopeful moment and watch it collapse, because what leaves your lips has the ability to either construct or destroy. Think about how entire nations have been moved by the voice of a single leader, how families have been either healed or broken by the tone of one conversation, how a child's entire future can be ignited by the encouragement of a parent, and you will see that your voice was never meant to be casual. It was meant to be a tool of authority. Silence in the face of fear gives fear a throne, but speech in the midst of fear dethrones its power. There are people who spend their lives waiting for others to speak for them, waiting for affirmation, waiting for validation, waiting for someone else to declare over them what they were supposed to declare over themselves. But the truth is, your voice is the first instrument of authority you've been given. When you speak, you are not just releasing words into the air. You are writing agreements with your own spirit. That's why if you constantly declare failure, negativity, and hopelessness, your mind and body begin to conform to that declaration. But if you speak strength, purpose, and vision, even in the middle of difficulty, you start to align yourself with resilience and determination. Your voice is a compass. It can set the direction of your steps before your feet even move. Opposition often comes to silence your voice because it knows the authority it carries. Shame tells you to stay quiet about your worth. Fear convinces you to keep your dreams hidden. Pain whispers that you don't deserve to speak about healing. But the moment you open your mouth and declare truth in defiance of those lies, something shifts. Darkness doesn't flee because you think differently. It flees because you speak differently. You don't need to shout to carry authority. You need conviction. A whisper filled with truth is more powerful than a scream filled with doubt. Authority in your voice does not come from volume, but from alignment with what is real and what is right. Your voice has the authority to break cycles. Families trapped in generational silence have been healed because one person decided to speak. Communities oppressed by hopelessness have been lifted because one person dared to declare a new possibility. Even in your personal battles, when you stop speaking the language of defeat and start declaring the language of victory, you awaken a strength that was already inside you but dormant under silence. Words are seeds, and every time you speak, you are planting something into the soil of your future. The question is not whether your words have power. The question is what kind of power they will release. If you could see how much weight your voice carries, you would stop wasting it on self-doubt and start wielding it with authority. You would stop repeating the lies of insecurity and start rehearsing the truth of your identity. You would stop letting your circumstances dictate your vocabulary and start letting your conviction dictate your declarations. Because when you speak, heaven listens, hell trembles, and the world around you begins to adjust. Your voice is not a background sound, it is a command signal. What you permit and what you resist often begins with what you say. The truth is, your voice is one of the greatest expressions of your authority. It can create courage where there was fear. It can awaken hope where there was despair. It can carve pathways where there seemed to be none. So, don't waste it on silence when you should speak. Don't waste it on fear when you should declare. Don't waste it on doubt when you should affirm. Every time you open your mouth, you have the opportunity to either strengthen chains or shatter them. And once you understand that, you'll never again treat your words as casual, because you'll know that your voice carries authority, and authority was never meant to be muted. Do you want me to go ahead and expand the fifth point, opposition reveals capacity, with the same 600-word flow? Opposition reveals capacity because you never truly know the depth of your strength until it is tested by something that seems larger than you. And while we often view resistance as proof that we are weak or unprepared, the reality is that it serves as a mirror showing us how much is actually inside of us. If you never had to push against anything, you would never discover the muscles you carry. A seed planted in the soil only grows when it pushes against the dirt surrounding it, and without that resistance, its potential would remain locked inside. In the same way, opposition is not the enemy of your growth, but the stage on which your true capacity is revealed. Too often people pray for easy roads and smooth seasons, not realizing that it is the very resistance of life that awakens dormant strength and calls forth power they never knew they possessed. Opposition has a way of drawing lines, forcing you to decide who you are and what you truly believe. When everything is comfortable, your convictions can remain shallow, your identity untested, your faith unproven. But when you face resistance, you are confronted with the choice to collapse under it or to rise in defiance of it. And in that decision, your capacity is revealed. Consider how an eagle uses the wind of the storm to rise higher rather than allowing it to push it down. What was meant to destroy it becomes the very thing that elevates it. That is the paradox of opposition. It does not diminish you. It exposes what is within you that would have otherwise stayed hidden. Many people assume that opposition is evidence they are in the wrong place or pursuing the wrong goal, but in truth, it often means the opposite. The size of the obstacle can be the indicator of the size of the destiny attached to you. Weak pursuits rarely attract strong resistance. The greater the call on your life, the greater the opposition that comes against it, not to stop you, but to test whether you have the resolve to handle the weight of what you are stepping into. Capacity cannot be built in comfort. It is revealed in challenge. A weightlifter grows stronger not by lifting air, but by lifting resistance. The heavier the weight, the more their capacity increases. So it is with you. The resistance in front of you is a signal of the strength that is being developed within you. Opposition also has a way of refining your focus. When everything is going smoothly, it's easy to be distracted, to drift, to give energy to things that don't matter. But when you are resisted, you are forced to sharpen your vision and concentrate your efforts. Opposition demands that you clarify what is essential and let go of what is not. In this way, it doesn't just reveal your capacity. It strengthens your discipline and focus, preparing you for the next level of responsibility. Resistance isn't there to destroy you. It's there to strip away what doesn't belong so that the core of who you are can emerge stronger. The truth is, opposition will either intimidate you into retreat or ignite you into action. The difference lies in how you interpret it. If you see it as a wall, you'll stop. If you see it as a test, you'll rise. Every great story of triumph is written in the ink of opposition. Heroes are not remembered for walking easy paths. They are remembered for what they overcame. And the same principle applies to you. The moment you start seeing resistance as a revelation of your capacity instead of an assault on your identity, you stop running from it and start rising through it. So when opposition comes, don't waste time asking, "Why me?" Instead, start declaring, "This must mean there is something in me that is stronger than what is against me." Every pushback you face is proof that you are carrying more than you think. Every obstacle you encounter is evidence of the strength you've yet to fully see, and every attack that rises against you is an unintentional testimony that your capacity is far greater than you imagined. Opposition reveals capacity, and once you grasp that, you will never see resistance the same way again, because you'll understand it as confirmation that you are stronger, greater, and more equipped than you ever realized. Do you want me to now expand the last point? Power is for purpose. With the same 600 word style, so the full speech structure is complete. Power is for purpose because power without direction becomes destruction, and strength without assignment eventually corrodes into pride. But when power is aligned with purpose, it transforms not only your life, but the lives of those around you. Too many people crave power for the sake of feeling important, for the sake of proving wrong the voices that doubted them, for the sake of building a throne to sit on, but power was never meant to be a trophy. It was meant to be a tool. Purpose gives meaning to the strength you carry, and until you discover that, you will always feel restless no matter how much success you achieve. The reason some people climb to the top and still feel empty is not because they lack power, but because they lack purpose to direct that power. Purpose gives power its true identity, and without it, all you have is noise and motion with no impact. Think about how fire can either burn down a house or warm a family, depending on how it is used. Power works the same way. It can destroy when it is self-centered, or it can heal when it is directed by purpose. That's why when people live only to prove themselves, they end up exhausted, angry, and unsatisfied, because power aimed at self alone will always collapse inward. But when you recognize that the strength you've been given was entrusted to you for a reason beyond yourself, suddenly life takes on clarity. You stop asking, "Why do I have to go through this?" And you start asking, "How can what I've been given serve someone else?" And in that shift, the energy you carry stops being wasted on resentment and begins fueling transformation. Power is for purpose because your victories are never just for you. Every battle you've overcome, every storm you've survived, every scar you carry, all of it is connected to someone else who needs the proof that survival is possible. Your purpose takes your pain and turns it into a testimony that can lift someone else from despair. Your strength is not meant to be hoarded. It's meant to be shared. The very reason you were given capacity is because there is a need in this world that only you can meet. When you start to see your power in that light, pride fades, comparison loses its grip, and insecurity evaporates, because you realize you are not running against anyone else. You are running toward the assignment placed inside of you. Purpose protects you from misusing your power. Without it, you'll waste energy fighting battles that don't matter, arguing over things that don't change lives, or chasing goals that leave you empty at the end. But when you know your purpose, you focus your power where it counts. You become intentional about how you speak, how you act, and how you lead, because you know every ounce of strength is tied to something bigger than you. Purpose brings responsibility, and responsibility keeps power from turning into arrogance. The more clearly you see your purpose, the more wisely you will steward your power. And here is the paradox. The more you use your power for your purpose, the stronger you actually become. Serving others doesn't drain you. It multiplies your impact. Living for more than yourself doesn't weaken you. It expands you. Power aligned with purpose becomes a renewable source of influence, one that doesn't run dry because it is continually replenished by meaning. This is why the people who make the greatest impact are not necessarily the strongest in body or the loudest in voice, but those who understood that their power was entrusted to them for a mission greater than their ego. The truth is, you were never given strength just to survive. You were given it to transform. You were never given authority just to silence your own fear. You were given it to bring courage to others. You were never given resilience just to endure hardship. You were given it so that your endurance could model hope for those who have none. Power is for purpose, and once you grasp that, you stop asking how much strength you have and start asking where that strength needs to be applied, because the greatest fulfillment you will ever experience is not in possessing power, but in pouring it into the reason you were created.